Let's talk about timelines. What are timelines and what are parallel realities? Our lives are a fluctuation in this degree of timelines that are all overlapping and intertwining. And then some of them split off into like these varying degrees of this might have been a timeline where you chose to have a baby with your first boyfriend, or this might be the timeline where, you never had children. So your life path starts where all of these are sort of intertwined. And then as we make large decisions like that, and sometimes also smaller decisions, we branch off into these varying timelines. But when we are talking about shifting timelines, we're shifting inside of a frame of varying timelines if we've already made big decisions, like the timeline where we had a kid with our first boyfriend and the timeline where we've not ever had children. You can't shift back into this timeline, but you can get information from that timeline. And you could potentially get information from that child or from that version of yourself on that timeline because everything is happening at once. But if we're in whatever timeline that we're in now, if we're wanting to get information or if we're wanting to shift into a different version of our reality, where let's say in this timeline we have a lack mentality and in this timeline we don't have a lack mentality, these are places that we can shift more easily by changing belief systems. A belief is just a thought that we keep thinking. Often we have belief systems that are passed on to us through generations where we don't even realize that it's a belief that we're choosing. We think it's just inherent within us because it's been told so many times that it just seems like it's the truth. And then you wake up and realize, oh, it's just a version of the truth, and now I don't have to believe that anymore. And when we shift from one of those beliefs, like money is hard to come by, into the belief of abundance is a natural state of being, then we've shifted timelines. So, if you're really wanting to shift your reality in that sort of way where you're shifting timelines, it's really a matter of looking into what beliefs are keeping you in the timeline that you're on if you're having difficulties. Because you can also just claim a timeline and claim that you're letting go of any beliefs that need to be let go of in order to shift into that timeline, and allow yourself to move from one to the other. As you're doing that, if you don't know what those beliefs are that would keep you in the old timeline as opposed to just firmly being in the new timeline, as you're making that transition, those old beliefs are going to come up for you to see, and then for you to be like, oh, I'm not choosing this one anymore. I'm going to continue moving forward without it. There's also ways to shift instantly, which seem instantly, and sometimes they're not necessarily instantly. That can also often be called a quantum leap. That's where you can sort of jump from one timeline to another timeline, where something that seems like it would have taken you an amount of time to heal just sort of dissolves in the instant that you choose, and you end up in the new timeline. But really, it's just a matter of making the choice in like a full scale way so that you're no longer the person that you were before, and you can be instantly the person that you are in that new now moment. What else to know about timelines? When you shift into a new timeline with new beliefs, this new version of you does not necessarily have the same memories as the old version of you. So there is a need to release ourselves from whatever past old versions of ourselves we're maintaining in new timelines. That can be sort of a process of stopping allowing ourselves to talk about our past in a way that it's still pertinent to our present moment if we're wanting to shift out of an old reality into a new reality, a full shift from one timeline to another. And you can sometimes make the shift to the new timeline, but using those memories and those times of talking about things as a way to pull yourself back into the old reality. And then it's like are you sure you want to be here? You already let go of this. Are you finished with this sort of vibration? And when you let go of it again, then you pop back over to the new reality. And there can be some in and out of timelines that happens in that way until you fully ground yourself into the new timeline and the new reality. Affirmations are a way to shift you from one timeline to another, because you kind of start with an affirmation in a state of disbelief. And then as you repeat the affirmation, you're attuning your vibration to the truth of that affirmation. So by the time you're saying it and really believing it, you're no longer on the timeline where you did not believe it. You're on the timeline where you do believe it, which is a complete shift in timelines and realities. Also, shifting timelines and realities is something that we're doing on a constant and regular basis. We just don't realize that we're doing it because it seems so much more cohesive, or because we don't realize what the disorientation is that we're feeling because we've made a shift like that. Sometimes we can make a shift, like if you get Reiki, you would likely make a shift to a new timeline, and then you come out of it and you have all of the disorientation and the exhaustion even, and then you have to allow your reality to play out so that you can see what you are or are not choosing anymore, and so that you can make those choices in your physical form, so that you're reaffirming, yes, I have shifted, no, I have not shifted in this way, or I don't want to shift in this way. That can also happen with a massage. That can happen with just conversations where we have realizations and we make new choices about belief systems. That can happen with any kind of healing that we do. It can happen with meditation. It can happen with being out in nature and grounding ourselves. It can happen with taking a camping trip. It can happen with the ending of relationships, not necessarily romantic relationships, but any kind of relationship. We might see that we have shifted, and then therefore a relationship does end, and we don't necessarily know why, but it's because we've shifted something inside of ourselves that's no longer in alignment with that person. And that's when they say things like, when one door closes, another one opens. Because when you shift something inside of yourself, depending on the size of the shift, the size of the frequency shift for what you were holding to what you are now holding and resonating at, everything in your reality might shift with it. There's all sorts of plant medicines that can cause shifts like that, which can be very helpful to make a shift in a very quick and powerful way, but it can also be very disorienting when you're not integrating what happened in those shifts with the plant medicines, because once you've attuned your vibration through plant medicine to something completely different, then you have to come out the other side of using that plant medicine and actually integrate everything that you shifted, which means that you have to see and validate that you have shifted by allowing emotions to come up and letting them go, as opposed to holding on to them and getting stuck in them and talking about them a whole lot with your friends or relatives or ruminating on them. It's a matter of just like feeling it to heal it, or allowing things to really fall apart after a plant medicine experience, because you have shifted your vibration, which means that the reality around you needs to shift as well, which means letting go of relationships, letting go of jobs, letting go of housing situations. It might mean just stepping further into your authentic version of yourself, depending on whatever intention that you set for using the plant medicine, which is a very, very powerful way to shift. If you just use plant medicine in a fun drug sort of way, then there's a much different shift that happens when you use plant medicine in a intentional healing way that can be much more powerful and useful, and then creates more of a space for integration to be necessary, which does shift you more fully because you're in tune and aware of what's happening, and you're doing it with purpose and intention.